Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Curious Mind podcast. My name is Gabriel Ellis. I'm a psychotherapist and a consciousness researcher. And in this episode, I want to elucidate more the approach of Hegel, the philosopher and philosopher of consciousness, and his contributions that can lead to a deeper understanding of the psychotherapeutic process. I want to start with a condensed quote. It's not like that in the original, but his sentences are too long. So here I want to condense it in its meaning. It's the beginning of his so-called encyclopedia of the philosophy. Uh, and the quote goes as follows. He writes there, certain feelings, images, thoughts, and body perceptions can be viewed as metaphors for abstract, deep content of the mind. Let me repeat it again. And to repeat again, this is in my words, but it's basically the content of the paragraph that he writes. Certain feelings or specific feelings, images, thoughts, and body perceptions can be viewed as metaphors for abstract, deep content of the mind, which means that in everyday life, the impressions that we have in our consciousness, the content of our consciousness usually doesn't come with the revelation of its meaning. For Hegel, the same content can show itself in different forms, in feelings, thoughts, images, and so on. And we, as the perceivers, the experiences of all those sense impressions, we are tempted to see different contents there. When we have a feeling and we have a thought, we tend to interpret the two as completely different, where in fact they could represent the same content, the same meaning. And Hegel, for him, it is important to emphasize that the content is the same and that we shouldn't be misled by the different expressions of this content. Yet, on the other hand, in my clinical practice, the form in which the content appears is extremely different. It is a big difference if someone has mainly the mode of experiencing feelings, or if someone has the mode of experiencing thoughts or images or fantasies or memories, and so on and so on. Let's take the example of stress. And for the sake of simplicity, let's assume that people have mainly one mode of experiencing stress. There would be one person that experiences stress as mainly physical symptoms, for example, as fatigue. A second person would experience stress mainly as emotional symptoms, for example, helplessness. A third person would experience stress as needs, for example, the need of running away or going on vacation. And the fourth person would experience stress mainly as thinking, for example, and many thoughts of how to solve a specific issue, a problem that they attribute as the source of the experienced stress. Here, I think Hegel is right. The same content, the same stress manifests inside the mind and then shows itself, expresses itself in those four different people in different forms, but essentially it is the same content. There is a big difference in the clinical practice, as I already mentioned, and here I want to express and to describe a little bit more what I mean with that. Let's say someone is the first simplified person that I mentioned. Someone experiences the stress mainly as physical symptoms, for example, blood pressure or insomnia, heart issues, fatigue. The problem here that the body is a tardy, sluggish system, which means the body takes a long time, relatively, to manifest the stress as a physical symptom, And above all, it takes a long time for us to get rid of physical symptoms, physiological symptoms of stress. So here we have already a limitation uh, in the clinical everyday life, which means if there is a client who comes with strong physiological symptoms, then I can already let them know in the first session, basically, that it will take longer to get rid of those symptoms than someone who comes with symptoms that manifest mainly as feelings or thoughts, because the body is a sluggish, tardy system. There's another issue that comes with the expression of symptoms in a physiological or bodily form, which is that the body is, for us, usually far away from understanding. Meaning, physiological symptoms do not exactly tell us what caused the stress. Let's say in the beginning, when I prepare myself for work and I leave the house, my symptoms already start. My stress symptoms start. I feel tired. I feel exhausted. Maybe I have heart racing, maybe fatigue, maybe I'm blacked out, all of those physiological symptoms. So obviously, my stress then is work related. But beyond that, what do my physiological symptoms tell me? Do they tell me if the stress is caused by the overall atmosphere at work? Is it because of how my office is shaped? Is it because of my limited career options? Is it because of a particular uh, coworker or boss that I have? If I have nothing else to go with, if the only thing that I have is my physiological symptoms, then I'm left quite clueless about what caused the symptoms. And obviously, I'm then also quite clueless about how to resolve the issue, other than stopping work, I guess. There's also this issue of intransparency of the physiological symptoms is also when we go to the doctor and they ask us if I have headache, if I have digestion issues, and they ask us if I have had experienced stress lately. Yes, most of us experience stress. Usually, when I go to a specialist, I would like to hear a little bit more than just this vague illusion that stress can be connected with that, because it is intransparent to me, the physiological aspect of stress. It is also difficult for partners and people that I live with, family members, etc., if I suffer from physiological symptoms of stress, uh, be it in my headache or digestion issues, and they suffer from that because we cannot make plans for the evening, for the weekend, etc. It could always occur that my stress flares up, my stress symptoms flare up, and then not only me, not only I am affected, but also they are affected in their planning, in the possibilities to support me, in the possibilities to understand me or to plan the future. So also here, the expression of stress, mainly physiologically in a psychosomatic way, is quite problematic. A big difference is if the same content expresses itself mentally, for example, as unmet needs. This is much easier to deal with because then I get clear indications about what causes the stress and also how to get rid of it. Because if I have the need, for example, to go on vacation, to relax more, to experience some adventure and so forth, then already the content of my mind gives me very clear indications of maybe what I have to change or reduce in order to reduce the load of stress that I experience, or how I can resolve it or at least compensate for it. And obviously, this is also much more productive in communication. The same case, I suffer from my stress symptoms. They express themselves this time not physiologically and psychosomatically, but mentally, and on the path of me understanding my unmet needs. Obviously, I can communicate much better to my partner what I need, what can be done. My partner can communicate much better in how far she is willing to support me in that, or I should do it alone. So also for communication, this is much more productive if I am so wired that the same stress expresses itself in on the mental pathway and the mental mode register in form of needs, thoughts about needs, and so forth. The problem with needs is if I don't have the willingness to pursue a satisfaction of my needs. This is something that I discussed in previous podcast episodes. To give you an example, if, for example, I have the need for variety or adventure in my life, it could be that this expression of from the unconscious, the expression of my need itself is misleading because in the background, there could be a problem of self-esteem lurking, or a problem of a lack of meaning and purpose in life, or a problem of loneliness, a problem in my partnership, my relationship. So it could be that the manifestation of the problem as a specific unmet need is misleading. And it is not so easy for individuals to distinguish if the expression of the need is genuine and truthful, or if there is something behind that that I should take care of. In practice, we need people with experience and intuition to help us sort out which case it is, if my expression of needs is genuine or not. This can be done with good friends if they are kind of intuitive and smart in guiding us through this process. Very few people can do it on their own or with the help of books or meditation, for example. In many cases, therapy with someone who has experience and with whom you can explore whether a need appears to be authentic in its manifestation or not is necessary to guide you safely through this process of understanding what is what. Good. Let us go back to the starting point. How does it make sense that for Hegel, who was such a gifted philosopher of consciousness and a proto-psychologist, if you like, how does it make sense that for Hegel, the content is crucial and not the form? Meaning that it's not so important if the content expresses itself in feelings or images or thoughts, that these expression is negligible. Well, this is because obviously the special content, or let's say in my case, the special content needs attention. The form, the expression needs attention. For Hegel, the reason why he emphasizes the content so much and not the specific form, the specific feeling or thought, he expresses that in another quote that I want to give that I, again, condensed. The quote goes as follows: self-knowledge has all the less value the more it degenerates into complacent ruminations of the individual in their precious oddities. Let me repeat that again. Self-knowledge has all the less value the more it degenerates into complacent ruminations of the individual in their precious oddities. Which means that for Hegel, and here he says that explicitly, self-knowledge as navel-gazing, as expressions of the very specific me, and how I feel and experience right now, is completely misguided. For him, self-knowledge is valuable then when it reveals general insights about the human mind. The relevance in my clinical work is this. People come with their specific problems. They can be emotional, for example, they suffer from feelings of loneliness or worthlessness, or they come with very specific problems in their relationships or in the family, or they have specific problems at work. Then for my clinical work, it is an important, very important first step to work out with them how their specific problems actually lie in the fact of the human mind and how it works. The foundation of that, the background of that approach is that we come into existence with the human mind. The human mind is a complex machine. We navigate life using this machine without having an instruction manual. And part, in my experience, a valuable part of the therapeutic work is to provide part of that instruction manual so that people don't only get a hack or a tool for the specific expression of the issue in that specific point in time, but that they are guarded by a much deeper understanding of the human mind, which problems it tends to generate, and how to circumvent, avoid, or solve these issues. Whether it's a general knowledge about how the mind works, how the unconscious works, or how communication works, for example, in intimate relationships. When there is more clarity in general about the construction of the mind, the construction of the unconscious, the construction of communication, the next step derives much more clearly and automatically. For example, when I have an issue in communication in my relationship, and through the therapeutic work, people understand that, for example, when people are emotional, that the mind gets narrow, and through the narrowness of their mind, they easily feel attacked, lash out. A direct consequence is that, for example, if I encounter a difficult conversation topic with my partner, that I prepare myself and I prepare her to get into a mindset of openness and non-judgment and listening, hearing each other out, putting myself into the other's shoes. There are different techniques for that in order to prevent a situation in which the mind, because it is constructed as it is, to avoid a situation in which the mind becomes too narrow and then develops emotions that makes it almost impossible to listen in the particular situation, in the particular argument. So this is the application for me in the clinical practice. One of the other fundamental insights that derives explicitly from Hegel's understanding that the content might be the same, but expresses itself in different forms, for example, thoughts, feelings, or images, is to avoid the misunderstanding that, for example, people who don't feel many emotions are, in fact, unemotional. What it means is that, let's say someone is very intellectual, brainy, or whatever, and they don't process their lives, they don't process situations much in the register of feelings that might lead their friends, partners, or whoever to the misleading interpretation that these people are not emotional. No, the truth is that they actually experience the very same thing that leads me to react emotionally. So they have something like an emotional processing, but it does not surface to their conscious level, which means that I'm wrong if I'm belittling their apparent lack of emotions. I treat them as someone who has emotions, and I work out with them. For example, also in the therapy, I work out with them what the unconscious emotional processes are that express themselves more on the level of thoughts, fantasies, needs, and so on. On the other hand, it's exactly, or the contrast is exactly the same. There are people who process emotionally, and they might that might lead to the misunderstanding from their surrounding, from their friends, partners, families, and so on, that there is no logic behind their processing, that there's no logic behind their feelings, that they're completely irrational. Also, this is completely untrue. With clarification, investigation in the therapeutic process, in trustful conversations, it appears we will work out how under or behind those apparent expressions of feelings, there is a strict logic. There are ideas, convictions, thoughts, hopes, expectations, all this rich mental life in different registers than the register of feelings that is driving and expressing itself as feelings. And while feelings can be worked on in a certain way, we are basically not blocked from working on those different registers. Someone who experiences feelings, we might just as well work on their hopes, on their convictions, on their thoughts, and so on, knowing that they will affect the content that is in the core of things, and as a consequence, will affect their feelings too. And here we need philosophers of the mind, philosophers of consciousness, just as Hegel was. And I think it shows how essential it is for practicing psychotherapists to deal with those foundations of consciousness, with these foundations of the mind. And it is, I think, a problem if contemporary therapists reduce themselves to learn therapeutic techniques without going into the weeds, without dealing with those complex manuals, so to speak, for the mind, in order in the clinical work to be able to address very diverse, very complex issues with which our clients and patients come to us in the hope that we can support them in their journey. Thank you for your attention. Let me know if you have comments or questions to this topic, and I hope to see you next time.